I would like to give us an applause for coming here on Sunday morning. Yeah, thank you, people. Yeah, we're such heroes of cultural heroes. Yeah, very heroic. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming on the second day of the INXO International Forum here in Balai Seni Negara. Today is the second discussion panel that we're going to have. We're going to talk about arts residency, the quality that it brings to the works of artists, especially in this region. Today we have Miss Bilqis Hijjas. Good morning, Miss Bilqis. She's a dance programmer, director of Rimbun Dahan, which gives a annual choreo lab, Southeast Asia choreo lab in her place in Rimbun Dahan. And we have Mami Odai from Japan. Good morning, Mami. Ohayo. Ohayo gozaimasu. She's the director of Sapporo Artist Residency in Japan, who also help and facilitate artists who wants to do residency in Sapporo. And we have Chang, Yoong, an independent artist from Malaysia who does a lot of arts residencies. Ohayo. And he's a visual artist, yeah. Here we have people from dance, and you facilitate artists from different backgrounds, both visual and performance arts, and he's a visual artist. Okay, so we're gonna do this 2-hour discussion panel with presentation from each speaker, and then we'll continue to a discussion, and of course with you guys, audience, you can participate also in the discussion, active discussion with us. We will start with Bilqis now.
Hi, good morning. Thank you all for coming. So I'm going to give you an introduction to one particular residency example from Malaysia, and then Mami is probably going to talk about her residency and also a more general overview of residencies, and Yoong also about his particular residency experience as an artist. So I'm coming from the producing side and also the provision of artist residencies. Some of you may have been to Rimbun Dahan, so some of you may know all of this, and if you haven't, you can see the pretty pictures. So Rimbun Dahan is the oldest and the largest arts residency space in Malaysia, and one of the oldest and largest in Southeast Asia. That's a view of some of it. Anyway, all the photos are of Rimbun Dahan, of course you'll know that. It's there, and it's that. My parents, Encik Hijjas Kasturi, my mother Angela Hijjas, are the owners. They live in that house. And in addition to the contemporary architecture that my father has designed, which is there, like that house, there are also heritage buildings that have been brought there from Perak and from Penang to be on site that we also use as part of our residency space. So it's on 14 acres. We have 14 acres of indigenous Southeast Asian garden, meaning that all of the plants that are there are plants that are native to Southeast Asia, which is really quite unusual. You'd be surprised by how many plants that we think are Malaysian tropical plants are actually not from Malaysia and not from this region, but we've become so used to them. So it's quite a special thing to have a Southeast Asian only indigenous garden. And we have been running the residency here since 1994. And in that time, slowly, we have developed infrastructure on the grounds to support the arts residency that we are running. So I'll just quickly show you some things. Here's some of the accommodation for the artists. And we have both visual artists and performing artists, mostly dance artists as residents. We also have many writers in different types of writing as resident artists, and also some arts managers and curators as well. So for the visual artists, we provide a studio that looks like this. There are several studios. We also have an underground gallery space, which is often used for exhibitions, particularly when we have significant residencies, which are 1 year long or longer. And for our dance residencies and other dance projects, we also have a dance studio. And we have various other conveniences and facilities that are available, including the swimming pool and our friendly dogs. So we've been having arts residencies since 1994. We began with visual art with the Malaysia-Australia Visual Arts Residency that was a year long, and Yoong Chia is one of the artists who has been a participant in this residency. Every year we had one Australian, one Malaysian artist who spent the entire year at Rimbun Dahan, and then at the end of their residency they would have an exhibition of all the work that they had made during their residency. But now we also have dance, writing, etc. Yep, there's some samples, an Australian sample and a Malaysian sample from the Malaysian Australia Visual Arts Residency. As you can see, it's discontinued. It only lasted until 2013. It was really very resource intensive, and it was also a lot to ask artists to be in residence for an entire year. That's like a really big chunk of your life. So after having done this, although it was extremely successful, I would say perhaps more so for the Malaysian artists, many of whom were really able to either jumpstart their careers or kick their careers up to another level in terms of their visibility, especially among collectors and galleries. Whereas for the Australian artists, it was often just a time in which they really got to focus on their own practice and also be in a completely different cultural space than they were used to. And most of our residencies are self-funded by my parents, mostly by my mother. We also have various partners who have, over the years, assisted us with supporting resident artists coming to our space, notably AsiaLink, which is an organization based in Melbourne, which sends Australian artists to residencies throughout the Asia-Pacific region. And in addition to the longer residencies are usually quite open-ended. So we also have shorter, intensive, large group projects, most of which I've organized, which usually have a very kind of focused, structured output. One of them was Work It in 2012. We also had an audience development workshop in 2013, which was a week long. And we've begun to initiate a network of artist residencies in Southeast Asia. So we had the first meeting of Southeast Asian arts residencies in 2016. Also, I have the Choreo Lab, which, as Keni mentioned, is a major event for the Southeast Asian dance region, bringing choreographers together in a very intensive residency situation. So we have various different models for residencies and performances. Actually, I'm going to skip these. Whoops. So now we have, our main residency is the Southeast Asian Artist Residency, which is 1 to 3 months. We have an open call it's closed in September. We are assessing applications now. This year we got over 100 applications, which is kind of amazing. But basically these are entirely funded by my mother, so the budget is very limited and the numbers are very limited. So they come for 1 to 3 months in various different types of practice from Southeast Asia, and we provide them with a small artist's allowance as well as accommodation and studio space and some facilitation and production support, but not much. Part of our attempt to become more sustainable in the long term was starting open residencies for international artists. So these are artists coming from beyond the Southeast Asian region, and they are required to pay for themselves. So it's a user pays model in which they basically rent a house and a studio. And we don't have very many criteria for their participation other than they should be professional artists. So how much time have I got? Oh, plenty. So now that we've been running this residency program for 25 years, is that right? Yes, 25 years-ish. We've had hundreds of resident artists come through for any time period between like a week and a year. So they've all had very varying experiences of Rimbun Dahan. Some of them have had a lot of support. We've provided accommodation and allowances and materials allowance. Some of them have had very little support and have just come on their own steam. Some of them we've been intensely engaged with and supported and provided with exhibitions, and some of them have just come and done their work and left. So hundreds of people who've had very different experiences. As a rule, our residencies, the longer ones, which are not the very short intensive ones, are very open-ended in terms of what the product should be. We do not dictate to the artists that they need to achieve anything in particular. For the year-long residencies that Yoong Chia was part of, it was understood that there would be the possibility of an exhibition at the end to display the works that they had made. And the artists always did manage to do that. It was always a possibility that someone wouldn't want to do it, and you know, that would be up to them. But after a year, you kind of have enough work to exhibit. And there are many artists who don't really show anything to us from their residencies. The residency is really up to them to spend the time focusing on their work. Some people use it as a transition moment between careers or between jobs to test things out or to find some sort of mental clarity in what they're doing. Many Malaysian artists have actually used it as a stepping stone from international practice. So I'm thinking specifically like people like K.Soeriaatmadja, who was working for many years in France and then wanted to come back to Malaysia and wasn't really sure about whether that was going to work out, and then took the year-long residency as a stepping stone to enable her to set up her artistic practice here in Malaysia. So artists use it for many different purposes. But generally we don't really tell, you know, we don't care if you give in a proposal and then you don't achieve it. Like really our proposals are not about what you want to achieve, but more like what do you feel this residency can help you do? Where are you in your arts practice at the moment? Where do you want to be? And also most of our acceptances for our open call right now are based on people's portfolio and kind of the excellence and interest of the work. One of the challenges that we faced very early on, I mean, we kind of, neither my mother nor I nor my father have any formal education in arts management. We had no idea how to run a residency. I was 15 when the residency started, so, you know, obviously I wasn't really involved. But we kind of learned a lot through trial and error over the years, and one of the things that we wanted very much, or my parents wanted very much in the beginning, was to have the artists really work with each other. And so we chose one Australian, one Malaysian artist every year, and the idea was that they would somehow like magically work together. And that totally didn't happen. Never happened. No, it's just not gonna happen. Visual artists, for a start, tend to have a very individualistic practice. They don't want to work with other people. They don't need other people to work. They're in their studios. They might come out and say hi, and they might, you know, we might have gin and tonics every week or so. But that's the extent, potentially, of the engagement with other people that they want. And that's fine. It's impossible, in fact, to force artists to work together when they don't want to. What we have found is that sometimes there has been a kind of synergy when we have enough artists in the space, which is not all that often, between, say, the dance artist and the visual artist, or between the sound artist and the dance artist, that happens organically. And we allow that to happen and we encourage that, but it's something that we found we absolutely cannot force. Sometimes, you know, magical things do happen. So, for example, this is a painting by a year-long resident artist, Gabrielle Bates from Australia, and it is of Donna Miranda, who was our first dance resident artist, resident choreographer, and, oh my God, what's his name? Saiful Razman, who was our year-long Malaysian visual artist the year before. Donna and Razman developed a very special relationship, as you can see depicted. It was a whirlwind, very exciting, fabulous romance that blossomed at Rimbun Dahan. And Donna and Gabrielle were friends, and Gabrielle was painting portraits of different people's relationships, and she asked Donna and Razman to sit for this portrait, which immortalizes the relationship that very quickly disappeared. But you know, at that moment in time, it was all very exciting. So these were creative relationships, personal relationships, that blossomed in the space, but certainly were not things that we could force. They happen organically, or they don't happen at all. So we've kind of given up the requirement for that to happen. The other main challenge of having a residency that's been around for a really long time is that you might end up with too many water lilies. What does that mean? Everybody who comes to Rimbun Dahan thinks, oh my God, it's so beautiful, and it is beautiful, apart from the mosquitoes. It's like a resort, but with mosquitoes. And we used to have lots of water lilies, and all the artists just wanted to paint the water lilies, and we ended up with lots of water lilies, too many water lilies, oh my God. Also, the Australian artists went through this period of like being totally fixated with how Malaysians have drinks in plastic bags, because they'd never seen drinks in plastic bags. So like all the artists were making works with drinks in plastic bags. So like, okay, we realize this is a novel and exciting thing for you, but so, and you know, in some ways also this is not something that we want to discourage. These are the spontaneous and intense reactions that you have to being in a new culture and a new space, and you're totally entitled to have them. And also because, especially with the water lilies, we consider the natural environment, the indigenous garden, the plants that are in the garden, to be a really integral part of the residency experience. So we want people also to engage with that. So you can see here two different examples on the bottom of User Pay's American artist who was here recently, who was creating very plant-based images. And what is her name? She was here yesterday. She's one of the INXO. She's here now. Yes, there she is. Hi, resident artist. Sorry, I've forgotten your name. I'm so sorry. I've got your image. I've got your image on the thing, and I've totally forgotten your name. Nadira, thank you. There, see, Nadira's. Which is part of a series that she's making and like continuing practice, as it also is for the American artist there. But you can see the similarity of just the vegetation. Lots of people, lots of vegetation. Not necessarily water lilies, but vegetation. But this is also something that we want artists to engage with because it's what makes our residency unique and special. So it's maybe not such a problem to have too many water lilies. Is that it? I think that's pretty much it. And our continuing problem is the issue of sustainability. It is a private center. It is funded by my parents. They obviously won't be around forever. How will that continue into the future? Will the small plants be able to grow up to be big trees? Is all very much up in the air. We do have some ideas about succession planning, but it's obviously not a sure situation. So we've been around for 25 years. Whether or not we'll be around for 25 more is debatable. But that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bilqis. As you all heard, Rimbun Dahan is such a generous house of incubation, network hubs, and a house of plants and process. Well, we'll need to hear more about residency facility that we can find in the arts world, which we will hear from Mami soon, before we get to the experience of artists who go to residency and how important is it for artists to go to residency and to have people like Mami and Bilqis who fight for this to happen every year for us. So Mami, can you tell us another view of art residency?
Hi. Hello, everyone. The first of all, I have to say thank you to the organizer of this forum. Thank you for having me here. Then thank you for the friendship, Yoong, Chia, and Mima. I came here finally. So this is my first time to visit in Malaysia, and I'm really happy to be here. Then I'm also really happy to talk about our residency from the Japan. And also, I'm really amazed with her residency. Then I'm so happy to have to make an appointment with her to visit there tomorrow. Okay. Let's start. Oh. Let's move. No. Moving? No. Yeah. Oh, this is the movie just filmed by the French filmmaker, because he bought the how can I say it's the camera? Drone in Japan. Then he wanted to have a test. Then we could get the good archive of our the studio building. Yeah, this is the building and located in a park. And you can see a little bit about the part of the city. We are in the city of Sapporo. Sapporo is the capital of Hokkaido. Do you know the place of the Hokkaido? It's the northern island of Japan. Snowboarding. For snowboarding. For snow jumping. Okay. Then the next. Yes, hello from the nose. So this scenery is the quite usual, ordinary landscape for us in winter time. But this is not Sapporo. It's the more than 300 kilometers more north from Sapporo, Odai. I try to manage my PowerPoint. Okay. Yes. I am the residency organizer, and my career started as the manager for the sound artist. The first 10 years, I managed with the many the live events and the exhibition with the Japanese sound artists. And eventually, I met the job of the International Art Festival. And the International Art Festival directed to work with the site-specific artist. Then I start to support the artists who want to start their artistic project from the beginning. Then I was fall in love with the process of their production. That's why I choose my career on the residency field. And for a long time, I only work with the sound artist and the visual artist. Then I am not sure about the performing arts area, actually. But the performing arts, the field is quite new for me since I started the studio in Sapporo. What is the artist in residence? Is the main thinking from me always, because the artist residence is the support for artist career building, but for me, from my experience, the artist residence is building a relationship between us and artists, and artist in residence is the network itself. I had almost 20 years on the residency field, and I think I have many kind of the experience on the many kind of the residency program in Japan. I try to explain the current work at the Sapporo Tenjin-yama Art Studio. The studio you saw on the video, the building as used as a hotel before. Then me and the city of Sapporo government tried to transform this abandoned building into a residency studio in 2014. Yeah. And what do we have at the time? When we are designing about the new residency, we only have the building, 13 guest rooms, and the restroom in the building. And the budget for the people is just as the building manager. And the three sadness by neighbors. That means the neighbors needs the rest space in the park, but that they lost. And fourth, the big trauma. Yes, this hotel was planned by the city government. Then they really wanted to have the many international guests into this hotel, because they also are planning to have a convention center at the same time. It was almost 30 years ago, but the plan was went really bad. So the hotel business was really bad also. Then they had to close the building. So that's why this building is the kind of the symbol of their trauma, the failure by the government. But we and the team is very expert for the community project, and also me is an experienced manager for the residency, and bit of imagination what we want to do with the empty building, and also how can I say? Yeah, spirits of punk. That's the important part. And then finally, we could transform into the residency studio from the abandoned hotel. And now this year is the 6th year, and the biggest number of artists come and stay with us in Japan, and also the 13th studio is the biggest number of studio in Japan too. And what we did is when the building is used as a hotel, the hotel opened only for the guests. But we designed the people can enter the hotel as an open space. So that means the giving the closed building a new life with our creativity. We try to offer the spaces to the people for their restroom and restroom. Restroom is fine. Toilet? Okay. That means for the relaxation. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Okay. Yes. But the people are really getting happy because they really wanted to use the restroom, real meaning, toilet. Yeah, the toilet. They need it. And also they are really happy to have their own space, to read a book and to work with the computer and spend the time with the friends. Also, the artists can access the kind of the public space from their studio as well. Then I tried to explain about the structure of the residency a little bit. I am thinking making the process of the artwork, it has the 3 phases. The first phase is the research, idea, and making a plan, and passion and interest to something. And the second phase is a production or creation. And third one is the presentation. Example, the exhibition and the concert, something. Artists can do the coming and going in between research, idea, with production, sometimes do presentation casually. Also for us, the mistakes from the back-end host, from the research, we also allowed to have the misunderstanding and a failure are always welcome on the residency program. It is the whole process toward the good works. So I have to say that the residency is, we are not the decision maker on their production and on their idea and on their presentation. We never do making decisions. Artists must be initiate or read their own ideas. And yeah, and we are not the exhibition maker as well. However, we are happy to support for artists to have any kind of experiments. The failure and the misunderstanding, I think this is the capacity of the residency. And this is the data from the K.Soeriaatmadja studio. You can see there are the mainly 3 purposes by artists. The first one is the production, and the second one is the research. And the third one is accommodation use. Accommodation use means the artists who are having an exhibition or a concert in the city, they can stay at our residency studio as just the accommodation. And the next data is the percentage, the domestic artist and the international artist. It's the 80% from Japan and 20% from the abroad. That means this situation is quite unique in Japan. Still, Japanese residency is for the international artists, not for the domestic artists. That's our kind of tradition as the Japanese residency. And see the numbers on the bottom. The first year we had 179 artists. And the 4th year, it's more than 400 artists come and stay with us. That's quite a big number for us. Oh. Hey. Yeah, this is the picture. You know these paintings by the Belgian artist. When I am planning the Sapporo K.Soeriaatmadja studio, I remind this picture. This is the idea is the artist is the hunter and go out to the city to grab something. That's the image of the program with the residency studio. We have no facilities in the studio because the facility always become a headache for the organizer because we need to update it every year and every year. So we gave up to have the specific facilities for the production. Then we just prepare the kind of bed and space for them. Because the city of Sapporo is already the big city and have many kind of things. So we try to connect those kind of each facilities. That is our coordinate for artists on the program. And also I additionally talk about the Hokkaido situation. So Hokkaido was said as the nothing place, because the Hokkaido is the young place in Japan, almost the same with Australia and the America. Then sometimes when I started the residency career in Sapporo, it was 20 years ago. The international artists came and always complain about the art scene in here. Oh, there's nothing. There's no good artist and there's no good museums. But on the other hand, that nothing around him means that he could focus on his own production. That's really good things. So I was thinking that maybe the Hokkaido and Sapporo situation with nothing is really good for artists, as a studio, I mean. I tried to explain a little bit about the residencies in Japan, and if you are interested in using the residency in Japan, please go at the Dyew website as a database of the Japanese residencies. The first one is the ARJ, and the second one is Move Arts Japan. And also, trans artists, the worldwide database of the residency. Please search the Japan. You will hit around 20 residencies on the website. And let's artists email me if you want. That's easier. And also, recently, we, the Japanese residency organizers, make the network. But the network is just happened the last year almost. So it doesn't work yet, but you will see in the future. Okay. Yeah, this is an unknown history of residency in Japan. But it's a bit complicated. I am not sure I could explain the whole thing. But the Japanese residencies is said imported from a European frame into 1990s via the foreign affairs as the cultural diplomacy. Then we learned the beginning of the Japanese residency was that. But I learned more by the alternative way. I found the fact that there was the artists and there were many people who supported those kind of artists. It was the traveling artists and also the supportive people for those traveling artists in Japan. It happened in 15th or 14th century already. And also we are the part of the Asian countries, means that there are so many natural disasters on the history. And by those the disasters, the people had to move. People had to evacuate from their own place to another place. That mechanism brought the cultural movement. So, for example, the people who got the damage by the natural disasters, who were artists or the architecture, had to make a move to another place. Then they rebuilt the space or their activity on the new place. Then the cultural situation, also the move with the people. So those kind of mechanisms happened a lot in Japan in the history, and also we had the traveling artists a lot. I think this is the origin of the Japanese residencies, and now the Japanese residency frame transformed into the really traditional way to the Japanese culture. Yeah, here is the timeline, really. It was imported, the residency, the word of the artist in residency imported in 1990s, but at the same time, the artistic activity became diverse. Then went to the 2000, so many artistic activities happened around in Japan. That means that the forms of the residency were changed a little bit. And also at the beginning, government supports the residency program a lot. But the government stopped to support the residency program shortly. So that each organization has to get a fund by themselves. That means that was the chance to do something new. Then the Japanese residencies become more diverse. Also, there was the greatest, the natural disaster happened in 2011. This is a really, really huge thing for everyone in Japan. That means that, as I explained about the Japanese history, so many creative people, the people on the creative class had to evacuate from Tokyo to the local areas. That's also the new era of the new residency. Oh, I am not managed with this word. Okay, so final. So. And I have to say that the artistic residency is not only for artists anymore, I have to say, because the art project form become the community-based and research-based, means the artist can't work alone anymore. Always artists need someone's help and someone's support. So advanced, the artists try to work with the people together. So the form of the residency changed from the scholarship type to the collaboration type. Oh, they did. Okay. It's time. Okay. Okay. So this is the map of the residency. So if you want to learn more about the residency, please contact me directly. Yeah, finished. Take picture.
Thank you. Wow, amazing. Again, we have a very generous person who accommodates the process of production. For us in Southeast Asia, people who accommodates process of artistic production is actually very rare. Where you also build relationship and cooperation with other parties in the city. You told me that the place is actually zero because we don't have facilities for artists, but she will give you new contacts and cooperation with different parts of the city who has the facility for your arts creation. And Mami also says that she caters different phases of the arts production, whether it be the research, production process, or the presentation. And it's really interesting how both you, Bilqis, and Mami give the authority of creation to the artist. So you give room for them to do their process, but not really giving the authority of what you want them to do. So that's also, the artists are spoiled by you. And it's really interesting how Mami highlighted the history of arts residency in Japan, where it was needed for artists to go out of their own city to be in a different culture and experience different environment to recreate their fineness in arts creation. And also that often is needed by artists. You know, we get mind blocks. We need the freshness of being in a different place. And at the same time, it also gives a different perspective for the existed residents to see how other people or new people see ourselves. And I think that often happens to you perhaps in Rimbun Dahan with different artists from different countries, and then give a different perspective and different representation of the water lilies, right? You get different water lilies. Yeah, so there you go. Now, so we'll see what the artist feels of being in residencies. How important are you both for this arts constellation? Please, Yoong.
Okay, first of all, I would like to thank you, INXO, for inviting me to share my residency experience. I have really wanted to share my residency experience since a long time, so this is a very good opportunity. So thank you very much, INXO. Okay, I will start with some shapes, and my talk will end with a song. Okay, first, square. What I think of an artist residency from my perspective. So an artist residency, obviously you need an environment, and you need time, and also interaction with people, the organizers and people you meet in the environment. And then when they all combine together, I think it's, that's my idea of what an artist residency is. So the small title for this show is Following the Dry Leaves, my experience in some artist residencies. So I was in Rimbun Dahan for a year in 2006. And this is one of the paintings I made there. So when I paint, I just follow my feeling. So I don't plan anything in advance, and I let whatever that comes to me translated into the canvas. So Bilqis said that there's a lot of water lilies, a lot of plants, but also there were a lot of bugs as well. And I used that as a kind of inspiration for me in this residency. So the millipede looks like a train. So at that time, Rimbun Dahan, they still haven't had the MRT yet, so when you have to travel to Rimbun Dahan, you have to take the commuter train. So in a way, this painting was me combining my experience and what I see there, and to make this work. And another bug. Yep. So one day after heavy rain, thousands of termites, yes, flew into my studio. So the next day, thousands of termite wings were on the floor. So this is one section. So I collected them and glued them together to make my self-portrait. Yeah. So this was 3 kinds of ant and termite wings that were left. They were left there the next day, so I didn't pluck them. But I sweep them up and glue them into the self-portrait. So this is a detail. Okay, one day I found a dead insect in my bed. It was wrapped in spider's web. So, and then it looks like a sailboat. So I collected a seashell and then painted like a seascape on it. So I call it the final voyage of Chang. And that is, that's how it looks like. So like Bilqis said, at the end of the residency, 1 year-long residency, there will be an exhibition together with the Australian artists. So these are some of the works I did while I was there. So the small round things there are actually chicken eggs that I hollow out and put on a clockwork mechanism. So it is like a 1 minute rotating storyline. And I really like to make really, really small works. So the 2 small dots there is actually a very small seashell of another self-portrait. And this was the exhibition. And as I said, it was all my imagination, but some things from the experience in Rimbun Dahan crept in. For instance, this looks like, after painting it, I realized this looks like the way from Rimbun Dahan to where you go and see the fireflies. And besides the paintings and the things on shells and insects, I was also starting to develop leaves towards the end of my exhibition. So I sneaked in a little bit of artworks there on the ceiling, which I think not many people saw it. But that was the beginning of how I start to use dry leaves. So in 2010, I was in Jogja for supposed to be a 2-month residency. And this was one of the performances I saw before an opening in Taman Budaya. So usually they will have performances, and then they block the entrance, you cannot enter, you have to see the performance, and they open up the exhibition for you. So this was a shadow puppet performance, a very traditional shadow puppet performance before the exhibition starts. And of course, they will have dandok singers. So a mixture of very traditional and very contemporary, very pop kind of event before the opening. So I was, like in Rimbun Dahan, I was starting to use leaves. Then when I went to Jogja, I want to somehow carry on with that idea of using leaves. And so, and also the wayang, I see some kind of similarities between very big leaves and wayang kulit, the shadow puppet itself. So I was thinking along those lines. So this was where I stayed in Bandung, Jogja. This is a sketch on my sketchbook. This is the house that I was staying in. And from the inside, there is a beautiful ray of sunlight that comes down from the roof. And also outside of the house, there were a lot of trees and a lot of leaves. So I was thinking along those lines of trying to make shadow puppets with the leaves. So I collected leaves and started to dry them. And using some stories and images I saw and reinterpreted, I started to cut and paint on the leaves. And I started to develop characters using leaves. So this is called Orang Belanda. So I was also researching a little bit about the history of Indonesia, and of course, Indonesia was colonized by the Dutch. And then the proboscis monkey, one of the name of the proboscis monkey was Orang Belanda. I think maybe because of the big nose. Yeah. So I was making this character of the Dutchman, and with the VOC sign, which is the Dutch East Indian Company, and then coming to make spice. Yeah.
How big is it?
I think it's sukun. And this is called Cina Totok, which is Chinese, pure Chinese in Indonesia. Yeah. So, and then of course, a lot of Chinese there are considered very rich. So I'm using the bamboo leaf to gradually make him from just a yellow-skinned person into someone who drives a sports car, and then inside a BMW with a driver. So all this takes place very serenely in the house. And of course there were, and this house was in a village, so also there were village people inside the kampong who were going on with their daily lives, like this bapak who is collecting the maize and drying them. So I was also writing like a journal on my sketchbook. So on this day, I woke up from a strange dream. And after the dream, when I opened the doors, meanwhile, my wife said, it's raining, and I said, no. So both of us was correct. It was raining, but not water, it was raining ash. Because when I was there, the Merapi volcano, which is a very active volcano, started to erupt. So the ashes, before that we heard about this news, and then there was a little bit of panic, then there was more and more panic, and then gradually people were, and some people actually died. And then the ashes were slowly traveling into the town, which was 20 kilometers away. And I was like 30 kilometers away from the volcano. But one day, the ash came to my house. Yeah. So this is a banana tree outside of the house, and you can see the volcano ash. So then we made plans to go to Bandung to actually escape. So I was actually a natural disaster refugee. So at that time, another artist friend who was also Malaysian, who was in Jogja at that time, he attended an exhibition, and he wanted to fly back to Malaysia. But the airport in Jogja was closed because of the ash, and then his flight was delayed. The second day he went to Solo, which is a nearby town near Jogja. There was an airport there. That airport was also closed. So we suddenly feel like we cannot escape. And then we were thinking of maybe when it reaches a very desperate situation, maybe we can buy a ticket, a train ticket or a bus to somewhere. But they say all the train tickets, all the bus tickets are sold out. So we were actually trapped. But Kao Leong Kiang, the Malaysian artist who was there, he had a driver who was driving him around Jogja. And then the driver suggested, why don't we all go out? So the driver brought his family, his wife and his child, and we were inside the car with him, and we went to Bandung. Yeah, so we said maybe we'd go there for a few days, and I bought a shirt from Bandung. So it was like a luxury refugee situation for us. Yeah. But then this was the situation we saw when we were traveling from Jogja to Bandung. Some places were actually quite heavily covered with ash, volcanic ash. So we ended up leaving the country eventually. We went to Bandung. Bandung airport was also closed because the ash has traveled to Bandung. So we went all the way to Jakarta and then flew back. And on that day, actually Obama was there on that day, and he had an earlier flight in the morning. So we left in the evening. Yeah. But after that, the volcano subsided. There wasn't any much extensive damage, but it made a very strong impression on me because at that time, so I was thinking we can run away and I can go to Bandung and have a holiday and buy this shirt because we are foreigners. Yeah. But what about the local people? What about the bapak who was drying the corn in his kampung? So how have they been doing with earthquakes and volcanoes? We are lucky, very lucky, because Malaysia, we don't have natural disasters, so we don't have to deal with this situation. But I think it's coming. Yeah, I think it's really coming. We have to accept and try to move on. And how to move on as artists for me personally. So during when the volcano was getting more and more active, we heard more and more stories from the local people of how they were dealing with the situation. And then one of the situations I felt, which was very interesting, was they were performing more rituals with shadow puppet. They were trying to appease a volcano, a natural phenomenon, with some kind of rituals. So, or maybe is it a way for them to comfort themselves psychologically, because maybe when you cannot control, maybe that's the only way to somehow cope with it. So I started to think about art in relation to ritual. It's like big rituals to fend off natural disasters, and small rituals in everyday life. So, so I left, and this is another residency in India, Bangalore. So India is full of beautiful contrast. So like this is a very beautiful Nandibu temple in one of the temples in Bangalore. And then you see cows eating rubbish. But then you see also very beautiful exotic images again. So for me, India is a very big contrast. And also nearby there was another city, there was this Mysore Palace, which reminds me of our own, yeah. So India to me reminds me of Malaysia. And also our shared our shared British colonial past. So like this is a botanical garden in Laba, in Bangalore. Like they will have like musicians with bagpipes. Okay, so this is a board saying that Queen Elizabeth had planted a tree there. So this is the tree. And there were a lot of young lovers in the botanical garden. So I started to pick the leaves from the botanical garden and make a story of our shared colonial past, and then also my impression of India through growing up watching a lot of Bollywood and Hollywood movies. So young lovers doing yoga in the botanical garden, and how they cannot be together because of parental disapproval. So all these are very stereotypical Indian Bollywood movies coming out to make this story. So eventually this work was made into like a comic form illustration on one side. And on the other side, it looks to resemble the wayang kulit, the shadow puppet, because also another link is from India is the form of wayang kulit and the story from wayang kulit, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, comes from India and goes through Southeast Asia. So I was trying to make those kind of connections. Okay, I was very fortunate to be able to stay in Hokkaido for 3 times for this residency. So first time was in summer. So the second time was in winter. This is actually a view from Tenjin-Yama, where Mami's artist residency is. So I was there for 2 months. And I was thinking, because I was starting to think like how to make artworks like rituals, and rituals requires some kind of energy. So I was thinking how to bring Malaysian heat into Sapporo winter for my residency. And I cannot use leaves because all the leaves has fallen down except for the pine needles. So I was thinking how to do artworks like that. So I was thinking how maybe I can use batik. So I went to a craft shop and tried to understand how Japanese made roke susome, which is a Japanese version of batik. And I tried myself. So, but I was using snow because actually I'm just playing with snow because I don't have the opportunity to play with snow. But I was also playing with snow alchemically, like using the processes of heat and cold and heat and cold. So, yeah. So as you know, batik, you need to melt the wax. So the liquid form, you need the liquid form to put onto the cloth, and then it becomes the solid form. And then you have to make it liquid again to remove the wax. Yeah, so I was thinking of that process of how to bring heat from Malaysia to Hokkaido. So I was using the snow and then quickly putting it into the hot water so that the wax solidifies. And then melting it again, and then using my hands to knead it until it looks some kind of shape, like a skull or bones or something. And then this was the exhibition. So I was putting the kneaded wax sculptures there, and then painted some candles. And from there, slowly leads out to the batik I did there. Yeah, dye is very good. And also, another thing of thinking of heat is putting sustenance in your body. Like this is the leftover of crab that somebody had eaten, so I used the crab shell and then trying to look at what shape comes out and then make it into an object. And then this is a meal one of the people who was working in Tanjiyama, she had a crab gratin, so that was from the crab gratin, and then I had a small scallop shell soup, so I combined them together to make this tiger. And also these are scallop shells, which we went to a restaurant to collect, and then eventually I made a comic out of these shells. So the last time I was in Shiraway, a month back, it was summer going into autumn. So Shiraway is 1 hour away from Sapporo. It's a very small town. And near the ocean. So I collected a lot of plastic from the ocean. And also it is near a forest reserve. So I also collected leaves. And this is a forest ranger. He was explaining the relationship of this leaf with bears. What is the symbiotic relationship between this leaf and the bear? And this year it was very weird because there was a large bear outbreak in Hokkaido. Yeah. So they said this is not common, and in Sapporo itself there was bear sightings. There's actually one bear that went near a house, and but it was shot eventually. But Shirawe also there were bear sightings. So this forest ranger, he was talking when we were walking along the trail, and then he said, "Oh, 2 days ago there was a bear just here," and then he showed me the video. So the bear was it. Yeah, we all laugh about the bear actually, but if you encounter a bear, it is really no laughing matter. So it is at the back of our mind there always is the bear. The bear is always there. And also, there were foxes in this small town, so there were a few fox sightings as well. And also, Shirawe, one of the product is Shirawe beef, which is on par with Wagyu beef. It is the same level. So we actually visited a farm. And also, I was collecting leaves from near the ocean and then in the forest, and then drying them and trying to make new works. And then stitching them onto a screen. So now I want to talk about the place I was exhibiting. So this is a very old cafe, and I want to talk about the owner. So the owner is two elderly couple, and I want to talk about them through the hour I made of a conversation I hear. My Japanese is very limited, but I think this is like a normal conversation for them. So the owner says "Papa," which is Papa. Then "Nani," what? "Kohi kudasai," coffee please. Okay. "Ine," it's nice, isn't it? So this is the cafe. Yeah, the interior of the cafe, the furniture is all made by the cafe owner out of very big logs, very heavy and very big logs. And the owner is on the right side. And the images of the leaves was the Shirawe beef playing the piano. And a bear singing. And also a fox playing the flute. And this is because the images came from a YouTube video. When I went to the residency, I actually Googled the cafe's name. And then I found a video in 2011 they held a concert in the cafe in 2011. So that was the inspiration for this artwork. So I said the talk will end with a song, and this is the song from 2011.
Thank you so much, Yoong for sharing your amazing stories of art residencies. May I directly ask you, what is your main motivation for going to so many art residencies in your career?
Actually, I didn't go to so many residencies. The Rimbun Dahan is a very important residency for me. It is not my first, it is my second, but it is the longest by far. And also, I think it was at a point in time where I was also a little bit lost. And I also don't understand why somebody would want to give an artist 1 year to have a residency so that we can just concentrate on our work. And at the end of the day, there will be an exhibition. So for me, it's all the things I want, but I don't understand why somebody would give something like this to an artist. But I feel residency changed my life. In one, because it really takes away myself from my daily life, because like how I have been living or trying to make work, and then suddenly been transported into another environment, and then I'm also doing work, but the way I live changes slight changes because you're taken away from your normal life. Then you start to discover about yourself, like what is essential, what are my habits and what are the essential things, and then afterwards being transported into even more different environment, like in Jogja or India or in Japan, in winter, in autumn. Those things changes again. Yeah, and then also people's perception in these different countries also is very different from Malaysia. So I think that adds up to my development as an artist and how I see the world and how I approach things. Yeah, so it was very important.
So are you saying that the discomfort that you feel when you go into another culture or environment pushes your creativity or gives you more time to focus on your self-identification as an artist?
I think it's both. It's both the discomfort and also, I think it's not discomfort, it's just
Difference.
Going out from your comfort zone. Yeah.
So it's needed to be out of your comfort zone. What
Yeah.
does a comfort zone make you as an artist? Don't you want to be comfortable and be established at one point of your life as an artist? Why are you seeking to be discomfort?
I don't seek to be discomfort, but I'm also restless, so I cannot be too comfortable, I think. Yeah, I think a lot of artists think that way. Yeah, they want to be stable in some ways, but also don't want their life to be so boring. Yeah, but because of that, maybe it motivates them into something different. Yeah.
I'm gonna ask Bilqis now. Why are you giving this opportunity for artists?
Well, it's not really me, right? It's my parents.
Mother, why are you doing
Well,
this?
on behalf of my parents, why are they doing this? The real reason is because my father is an architect and he likes to build things and he likes to design things, but technically he's retired, but of course he cannot retire. So he likes to have projects, and so some of these projects were like, build this residency house. So he wants to build things at Rimbun Dahan because he got a lot of space, but got house already. So after that, what do you build? So then, we will have a residency. So I can build this, I can build that, I can build this. Then build already, then give to my mother, you do something.
That's very
Yes, that's the
inspiring.
Isn't it inspiring? Yes, absolutely. All of this is just to indulge my father's desire to build things. Yeah. But I think originally, because we felt like we had the space, we had the scope, there was a possibility to do something, And everyone was like, oh, you moved out to Kuang, is it? Are you going to have miniature ponies? And we're like, no, we're not going to have miniature ponies. We're going to have artists instead. So yes, that's what we did. I think my father was always very interested in visual art. Neither of my parents are artists, but we've always had a household full of art. At one point, my father, during the recession in the 80s, when he had nothing to do, he shipped himself off to Florence, I think. No, somewhere else. Urbino in Italy, and had a residency there, trying to teach himself how to paint, because he thought he might want to be a great painter, and then he decided that he wasn't going to be a great painter and he's going to leave that. But I think both that experience of having been on this trip to Urbino, being surrounded by, classical Italian art, and other people very, dedicating themselves towards their artwork, made him realize the value of a space like that, and made him realize that he, as a person who was interested in art, who didn't think that he himself could be an artist, could really make a contribution by creating a space like that in Malaysia. So when we had the space and we had the scope, that's what he wanted to do. But basically, my mother runs it.
I'm quite curious though, how much does the residency brings impact to the environment around your facility?
Absolutely. I mean, the space is a residency space. It's an artist
But
space.
to the society around.
Oh, to the community, immediate community. Oh, they think we are the devil.
That's interesting.
Yes. Well, our staff, it's a Malay reserve area. It's quite working class. Some of it is quite poor, and there isn't a great deal of interaction between the residents and the community. We don't have a structured outreach program. We have at some points tried to achieve this, and sometimes we have workshops. But a lot of the times the workshops or the outreach or the open studios that we have attract people coming from the arts community in KL rather than people coming from the immediate surrounding area. I think we are viewed with some distrust. Partly this has to do with the perceived non-Islamic nature of some of the artists' practices. We are open to having gay couples. We have had many gay couples staying in our residency, and we are completely okay with that, whether or not the community is okay with that. And yeah, this makes me make it sound like Rimbun Dahan is some kind of like sex, drugs, wonderland. It's not at all. But I think there are some things that make the immediate community think, oh, that's not really for us. So it has been sometimes a challenge to...
Is that a challenge that you would like to,
to address? Yes, but I think we need someone in a full-time position to really work on that. And at this point, we haven't had the capacity to do that so much. We did, I mean, this is not really a residency issue, but about 20 years ago, I was teaching dance classes that were open to the public at Rimbun Dahan and open to teenagers. And lots of teenagers from the community came, and I was teaching them dance and then also enabling them to do their own dance. And this was Destiny's Child era, and everybody wanted to do I'm a Survivor. So there was lots of that, but it ended up being a lot of the young boys from the community, young teenagers who seemed to identify as gay, coming and doing Destiny's Child and dressing themselves up and doing each other's makeup, and then that is what the community thinks of you. You are enabling our youth to pursue the lifestyle directions of horror. So it's difficult because, yes, we did want to enable them to express themselves. I did want to enable them to use dance in whatever way they wanted to use dance. But when that directly contradicts what the majority of the community wants to see happen, then it does become difficult. I don't know, maybe Yoong Chia can give a reflection of whether did you have anything to do with the immediate community when you lived there? Yeah. We don't require it from our artists. You go out and you eat lah. That's mostly the.
Yeah, I think because the surrounding area is still very rural and in a way conservative. It is very difficult because I think the arts here is not as people's acceptance of arts in Malaysia is not as developed as in Indonesia. So I feel when I was in Jogja, there is huge community that actually goes to exhibitions. Like one exhibition opening, you expect 500 people. Yeah, there is a norm, I think, in Jogja. But I think in Malaysia, it doesn't happen this way. I think a lot of people in Malaysia are still very suspicious of art. And also conservative views are still very much part of our society. So it's very difficult. It's something we have to tread very sensitively. Yeah.
And how do you think this residency can fill in the gap between the audience and artist ecosystem? Are you guys as artists and art activists in Malaysia are trying to fill in these gaps? Because what's the importance of creating arts then if you don't communicate with your audience?
I'd say the audience is a very specific one, and in terms of contemporary art, it does tend to be a very elite particular audience. It's not a mainstream audience for contemporary art particularly. It tends to be very urban. It tends to be more English speaking, although not necessarily. And yes, this is a problem. I'm not sure that it's entirely the responsibility of the artists themselves to solve that problem.
But artists in Southeast Asia is also producers and curators and writers, and we take all different roles, an artist but also activists. So we have to do something about it ourselves, don't we?
Maybe.
What do you guys think? It's a small forum.
Maybe
Let's talk together.
What about your residency in Japan? What is they use your restroom?
Yes, the restroom is the key. Yeah, but we can't think we could make the big change in between people and us. But I think it is really okay, and I think it is still, we have a possibility to do something go together. So we don't, maybe I don't expect a lot of things on making the differences increase. I just leave. Then at least I try to do something for building the friendly network, friendly relationship. It's quite okay. I don't care if they are not interested in art and culture. It's really fine. Yeah.
Well, I have my presentation that actually brings together what we're talking about, I think. It's about, can you please put on my presentation? So I actually run a choreo lab called Sasi Kirana, choreo lab and dance camp in Indonesia, and since 2015. And I like to think that this short residency program, it's going on for 5 to 10 days every year. It's really depend on our financial situation. We sometimes get supported by corporates, sometimes by the ministry, and for the first time by the local government this year. It has always run in Bandung, where I was born, where I'm based, and I like to see it as a platform of place where we learn to unlearn. So yeah, actually this platform is for questions about contemporary dance in Indonesia. When I started this dance camp, I had been a traditional dancer for over 25 years, a traditional Balinese dancer. And when I tried to question about contemporary dance in Indonesia, I had no one to talk to in Bandung. So I created this platform to be confused together with dancers in Bandung. And apparently there are a lot of confused dancers in Indonesia. So we not only gathered the dancers from Bandung, actually we only had one from Bandung, and the other part is from Aceh to Papua, which is the whole Indonesia. So we gathered 25 dancers who are actually very confused of the word contemporary, because most of us are traditional dancers based. So what we are an initiative who tries to contribute to the development of the contemporary dance ecosystem. Contemporary art, actually, because the word contemporary is so sexy yet ununderstandable in Indonesian logical term, because we actually don't go through the same historical journey as where the contemporary word came from, which is from the Western part of this world. We try to question the roles of the existing institutions and fill in the gaps, because we do have a lot of arts institutes in Indonesia that teach a lot of theories, but really don't give anything much when people graduate in how to practice their art after they finish their university time. And then what we do is we map the dance potentials in the country, because we do have good dancers throughout Sumatra, Kalimantan, Java, Sulawesi, Maluku, and Papua. And why do we make this platform? Because dance or body movement is found in almost every ethnic groups in Indonesia. And as you know, Indonesia consists of 17,000 islands and 450 more ethnic groups, and it still is very important for us to be in our ethnic groups and to have that as our identity. And we see, I see a big gap between the high demand of contemporary dance work from Indonesia. People know that we have good dancers, we have good choreographers, but the capacity doesn't really reach, our dancer capacity doesn't really reach that demand because of what? That's what we were trying to find out from the dance camp. How? We do it in a super intensive workshop. It's a 5 to 10 days semi-military workshop. Everybody gets up at 7, you line up at the toilet restroom. And we don't rest there. We queue and then do a 9 to 9 intensive workshop by heavy mentors like K.Soeriaatmadja, who would, make people jump, frog jump, going up and down 200 times, and really try to unlearn your body. Because of what? Indonesia is such a broad country. We get dancers who come from Sumatra with a very strong silat background, but then you also have dancers from Maluku with their ability to dive, and they have different muscles, they have different ability, they have different perspective about the world. We have a dancer from Bali who is very philosophical. You have dancers who, what they do every day is to get coconuts, and very physical, very intuitive, very non-philosophical, and then you get them together and converse with their bodies. And that's really interesting. And to see them suffer together from the semi-military workshop, what we found is that when they are encountered with the same suffering, this is really bad, but it sounds bad, but they become equal. They know that they need each other to conquer this dementors. So that's what they call it, dementors. The mentors are the dementors in Harry Potter, yeah. And that sense of equality actually needed for us in Indonesia because we are such a diverse country with, you know, people with different backgrounds, and sometimes we need that to realize, we need time to realize that, hey, we are actually from one nation, you know. I don't know you before, I don't know you 2 days ago, but suddenly they become family because the same suffering that they're going through. So from that, we do research. We research each other. We research the different backgrounds, and at the end, we do a site-specific performance. And then we know that this is a marathon run process, so it's not finished at the end of the dance camp and choreo lab, but we go through a long-term mentorship and relationship. Some people get married from this camp, you know? Yeah.
Some people have babies from Rimbun, Dahan.
You see? Yeah. That's what actually, yeah. That's what we do best. Sufferings. So yeah, the sustainability of relationship is, we try to keep, to maintain it because it's a big jambore, it's a big family trip every year that we have, and it's really good to have people, you know, from all over the place in Indonesia. What we try to offer to our participants is the value that art is a representation of the socio-cultural phenomena in the society, and try to question that too. Really? Is that what you do? Like with your Serampang 12 and with your Gambyong dance as a Javanese dance, is it really still the representation of your community now? And is art still a powerful media that can actively participate in development of humanity? And to that, in Indonesia, dancer is always the second class citizen profession under doctors, the army, you know, all those intellectual profession. But yet before, in our past communities, artists are always the philosophers of the village. We're always next to the most important people in the village. But what happened to our history that made dancers and artists becoming the second class of the community? We try to also develop that because I'm so tired of having dancers who cry because he is not allowed to dance by his family. Everybody in Indonesia, if you ask them, do you agree that traditional dance or dance can bring diplomacy to the Indonesian culture, as a diplomat for Indonesian culture? Of course they will say yes, but will you let your family member to be a dancer? That's a big question, you know? Why? Then we need to do something about it. We are the dancers, we are the choreographers, we need to change that situation. By what? By being intellectuals, by starting to use your head, not just your body. So what we try to do is how to negotiate your intuition with your intellectuality, and to bring creativity, open mind, and empathy in it, because we do need a lot of empathy. In this political condition, you know, empathy is something that we seek for. And skills, of course. And the skills is not only just technical dance skill, but also critical thinking, character building, and self-identification, because we do have a lot of confused youngsters out there that needs help to identify themselves, and also give a little bit of spices in their character building. So now we have around more than 100 dancers throughout Indonesia. We try as less as we can to get Javanese dancers in the camp, because Javanese dancers already have a lot of access to great education or opportunities in dance. So we try, now we have, our generators in Sumatra, Kalimantan, Sulawesi, Maluku, and Papua, not yet in Nusa Tenggara, because they don't dance a lot, they sing. So this is the, how do you play this? Can you play this? This is a video of what we did in Tanjung Pinang and the audio. Just 2 weeks ago, this is just a teaser what we did in Tanjung Pinang. So we usually started with research, a few days of research of the local culture. This is the land of Gurindam 12. This is on an island of, it's a cemetery island actually, of the kings in Rio Islands. We had 4 choreographers from different parts of Indonesia, and we tried to dig in the history of the community. And we interact with local dancers who were traditional dancers and never ever encountered with contemporary dance. And they are scared to hear contemporary. So we had to convince a lot of people when we say contemporary. Not just the audience, but also the dancers and artists in the area. And this is actually almost in all over Indonesia except Java. Here's Hartati and Eko. This is what we needed there. So these are young dancers and theater actresses. This is their first time doing a contemporary piece. It's actually an embryo. And we were faced with the development of the island right across the theater. So what happened actually, people there were just afraid to hear art and the word contemporary art especially, because it feels so distant to their tradition. And I think this is probably the same as what happened in a lot of Southeast Asian countries, because they don't want to not to be traditional. And so what we did is we tried to offer contemporary art as the media to re-question and revisit and reinterpret tradition, to get to know more about tradition and to see it in a different perspective. But then it actually gives the space for young people to understand their tradition, because tradition is not lestari. What's lestari? Sustainable? Do you know lestari? Yeah. Lestari is sustainable if you don't do it. If you just do it, we have to question about it, and we have to make something not new, but to be negotiative. So what I see from our art residency is actually the negotiation of an artistic idea and motivation and skill. I think I see from Yoong, for example, how it first was very personal. As you said, visual artists tend to be more personal, but then when you see the Merapi mountain erupted, you start to think about the people, the community around it. It becomes, a wider, and the idea also become deeper or higher, and also bigger, and also skill development. It also negotiate you as an artist with your biological body, if you, or your social body, your spiritual body, or your political body, because we do consist of these bodies as an artist, as a person, and you can choose actually in that time slot where you have the luxury of 1 year in Rimbun Dahan to just focus on your on yourself and your arts practice and being fed well, and being placed well. It's such a luxurious time for you to digest all this in your time as an artist. So yeah, I think we'll send the mic to you guys in the. Do we have time?
3 minutes.
Oh, we don't have 3 minutes. Yeah. You have a question? Yeah.
Quite clear about how residencies for visual artists work, because you invite or writers, and maybe for dancers, one person. But do you do residencies for small groups of people, like a group of dancers coming, as opposed to a choreographer?
This is a continuing challenge that we have. It's much easier to accommodate visual artists and authors because they don't need anything and they're individualistic creators. Even with dancers, it's extremely difficult to have an individual practice, and a lot of the dancers, the reason why we don't have so many residencies for choreographers is because they need a lot of support, and it's beyond our capacity to provide them with a lot of support. Some things that have happened is that companies have come to Rimbun Dahan to have an intensive development period all together as a group. So Amrita Performing Arts from Cambodia came, THE from Singapore came to make a work in that space away from the distractions of daily life. Other things that happen is that I hook up choreographers who are coming in with local dancers, but that's pretty resource intensive for me in terms of like producing this encounter. So it is a great challenge to work with performing artists as opposed to visual artists and writers.
Do you have a closing statement about this, and actually how people can find you, and how can people find art residency opportunities?
We have a Res Artists, as Mami pointed out. We're on Res Artists, as many other residencies in the region are. It's a website, you can look for it. Also on Facebook, we have a Southeast Asian Residencies Arts Residencies Network, which you could also look for if you're interested in this particular region.
We have, luckily we have the many artists 1 year. So the next artist come by the former artist comments. So the friends network.
I think for artists, it's very difficult to apply because, I mean, it's such a heartbreaking process. You put in so much, you think of what you want to do, you plan your proposal, everything, and at the end of the day, you don't get what you applied for most of the time. So it's very heartbreaking, and then you think whether it's you or are you not good enough, things like that. But I think if you don't apply, you don't have a chance. And I think most of the time it's not about you. It's just it's not the right circumstances. Sometimes maybe the residency body is searching for something else at that point in time. Maybe next year they will be searching for something which is more like you. So it is. I think for visual artists, because we work individually, we tend to put everything. We tend to individualize everything. So like if we didn't get it, maybe we are not good enough. That is not true. I think it's just not the right time. It's just not the right combination. So if for artists, if you want to go to residencies, please apply and don't take it personally. I think.
Yeah. Thank you, Bilqis and Mami and Yoong. Still, arts residency is a very good opportunity for artists, and also the environment where the residency is held, because really it's a matchmaking, not game, but opportunity. As Yoong said, it's not always about what about the artist, but also what the environment and the residency need for the artists. You can search Asia Link and Res Artists, because they give a lot of chances there, opportunities for different multidisciplinary art. And I think the most important part of being in arts residency is actually the everyday conversation, where you get different sensoric phenomena and experience, where you see things differently, when you hear different language, when you speak different, when you try to speak different language and be in different cultural environment, that gives you the excitement and another fuel for your artistic experience. And of course, that brings time for you to process your art, to process and build relationship and cooperation, and to give time for you to present your works in a better way. We'll see you at lunch if you want to continue to talk about arts residency. There's still a lot of things that we haven't uncovered through this conversation, including the success indicator of arts residency. We never got there, but let's think that everything is successful. They've done it for 25 years, and she's done it for 20 years. He's done several art residencies, so it is important. It is very exciting to be in art residencies. And please, if you have a place where you can accept residency, just build one. We need you. Thank you very much. Thank you, INXO, for the International Forum.